In other news this evening, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clarke, has appealed to public sector employees for patience and calm regarding the compensation review, noting that the consultative process is underway. Dr. Clarke's comments came during his address to the nation last night.
On behalf of all Jamaicans, therefore, I appeal to all public sector employees for patience and for calm. We understand your apprehension. We understand your fear. We know that you have been waiting a long time for the compensation restructuring reform, and many are now anxious about what it might mean for you. We know you have been hearing things, sharing figures, viewing calculations, and there may be some misunderstandings about how this will all work. It is certainly possible that in some instances you are receiving partial and incomplete information out of context. I humbly ask that you avoid conclusions at this point. There is a consultative process underway. Things will be much clearer once these consultations with your union or bargaining group are completed.
His address comes amid last week's industrial action involving several public sector employees. Last week, air traffic controllers and employees of the National Water Commission and the National Housing Trust took strike action. At the last moment, one of the largest unions, the 30,000-strong Jamaica Civil Service Association, the JCSA, withdrew a notice to take industrial action starting today, Monday, May 16, following an urgent meeting last Friday with Dr. Clarke. The JCSA says it was not pleased with the slow pace of the compensation review. The Finance and Public Service Minister said things will be much clearer once the consultations with the unions and bargaining groups have been completed.
For a complex and ambitious reform such as this restructuring of public sector compensation across all of government for 110,000 public sector employees organized into 47 central government bargaining units and 140 public bodies, there has to be an established process as we drive towards implementation. The process is that for those who work in central government, civil servants, police, teachers, nurses, doctors, dentists, other healthcare workers, correctional officers, firefighters, etc., we have been engaged in consultations with your union and bargaining group representatives. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has already met with 45 out of the 47 central government bargaining groups and unions. You will have the opportunity to provide feedback, which will be considered in the second round of consultations, which will shortly begin.
Dr. Clarke has reassured public sector workers that it can take the government at its word as they're working in the best interest of the workers.
Please take us at our word that no public sector employee will be worse off. Some persons have responded to this assurance with calculations, valid or invalid, that supposedly demonstrate a decline in net pay as a supposed refutation of this assurance. This is misplaced. The assurance is not a statement that contends that everyone is better off with the proposals on the table. We are aware that in any set of proposals designed to cover 110,000 public sector employees, there could be cases where the proposed changes lead to less net pay. What the assurance instead means, however, is that wherever through reasoned, objective, and data-driven feedback, it can be proven that someone would indeed be worse off, we will work to find a fix.
Meanwhile, Dr. Clarke said engagement with public bodies will commence once the discussions have concluded for the central government, and it's anticipated that this will occur within the next 6 months.
For public sector employees employed to public bodies, I know that you have heard where your colleagues in central government are in receipt of information about the compensation restructuring, and your management and your representatives have not yet been able to tell you when your consultations will begin. This has been met with displeasure. I completely understand that. For those public bodies, such as the National Water Commission, the National Irrigation Commission, the Broadcasting Commission, Civil Aviation Authority, PICA, Petrojam, among others, where the agitation for reclassification exercises predates the commencement of this all-of-government compensation restructuring reform, it is particularly irksome for you that from your perspective, now that compensation restructuring is here, you now seem to be at the back of the queue. The irony for you is too much to absorb. I understand that too. Given the huge scope of this exercise, however, and its complexity, for better or worse, we decided to conclude with central government first and then engage with public bodies. Given current timelines, we anticipate that engagement with public bodies will occur within the next 6 months. We have been ambitious in looking after your interests. We therefore ask for patience.
In the meantime, leader of the opposition and president of the People's National Party, Mark Golding, along with other party representatives and members of the public, marched to the Ministry of Finance today at Hayles Park, calling on the government to balance lives, not just the books, and put people at the center of policy making. Mr. Golding called on the government to put measures in place to, quote, arrest the runaway fuel cost in Jamaica.
We are gathered here this afternoon in Hayles Circle for a number of purposes. We are showing solidarity with the people of Jamaica who are facing a wicked crisis, a very challenging times from the cost of living, and in particular from the gas price that feeds into so many other prices in the economy, from transportation to electricity and everything that relies on those things. We have made a suggestion in the budget debate as to how to cushion the crisis in relation to the gas price, because the budget is predicated on an import price of oil of $67.50 US per barrel. We all know that the price of oil on the world market is much higher than that. And we have said that the taxes on the fuel that is derived from that oil should be capped as if the price at which oil was imported was that budgeted price of $67.50 and not $100 US or more. And we are going to deliver today a letter to the Honorable Minister of Finance attaching a draft order for his consideration to implement that very measure. And he can implement it with immediate effect.
Mr. Golding has told the government that the situation currently causing unrest with the public sector should be dealt with as soon as possible with complete transparency.
And we are peacefully gathering here with a view to making a statement of support for the Jamaican people as they face this terrible crisis. We know, of course, that there are other issues on the table at the moment. The public sector workers in particular continue to be very restive, and we know of the events of last week, and we know of the attempts that have been made to try and reboot the process, so to speak, because it got off to a very bad start as a result of what I would call the inept, poor handling of the situation by the minister and the government as a whole, by not being transparent with all the information that the unions representing the public sector workers have been asking for, letting them have it in drips and drabs, and not entering into what the unions regard as fulsome negotiations on the details of this measure. And we feel that this is a critical thing for it to be a success, and Jamaica needs it to be a success. The government must approach the whole issue of the public sector workers' compensation reclassification in a transparent and fair and equitable manner. And that is what we have demanded. We want to see the benefits flow to all Jamaicans, whatever station in life they come from, and we will never do anything to undermine that process. But we will support fairness, transparency, and justice for the people of Jamaica.
Members of the public who joined in on the march to the Ministry of Finance say they're urging the government to do something quickly as they're grappling with the high cost of living and not enough pay.
We have no water in the community. Water truck come and as so it come, it finish. We buy and as we buy it finish, we have to wash, cook, flush toilet, bathe. We have all the necessary, all the needs for the water. And no water, we're under terrible pressure. Peanut raising and everything raising and we have to go with all that raise. We can't eat the money, the little money, so we have to stretch it here, there and everywhere. We need justice. The government needs to do something about this and do it like fast. 6 months too long. A lot of person can dead before 6 months, in 6 months time. You see today, you don't must see tomorrow. Yeah, 6 months is too long to wait on anything for that matter. Nobody gonna wait 6 months for something unless you wait and you know it's certain. But we don't certain that 6 months wait. I get a water bill, 84,000 for April alone. Yo, 14,000 was March, I'm pay 9, balance 5,000 odd. And the current April one comes to 84,000. Me nah have no laundromat, me nah run no restaurant. I just me and my dead left grand youth live. Yo, they must stress me.